where there's support, where we share something in a family-like way, not the group of people that sucks all your energy out of you. You know, the word companion is exactly the same word. And sometimes words teach us something about the culture in which we live. You know, nowadays, in the 21st century, we would not really think about the words companion and company as synonymous. You know, in fact, the connotations would be almost the opposite, right? That my companions are the people I go to complain about the idiots who are in my company, you know? So I'm sort of laying out there the idea that maybe we need to make our modern companies a little more companionly places. And believe me, the reason why I say this is not so that we are all soft and nice to each other, but for very bottom line kinds of reasons. Let me describe for you the situation in business, and you can make the analogy, or hopefully non-analogy, to your own lives and works here. When people are surveyed now who work in big companies, never do more than half of people say they're happy in their work. And only about 40% of people say that they trust their own senior manager. And half of people say they worry frequently about losing their job, and the work week in these unhappy places is now 20% longer than it was one generation ago. Anybody could tell us that if this is the human environment in which you're asking people to work, there's no way in the world that they could possibly be delivering at utmost productivity, and the lesson is exactly the same for you. You need to put people in human environments in which they're capable of performing at the highest levels that you need them and want them to perform. Okay, let me just take a minute or so to sum up, and then I think the questions and conversation will be more interesting than anything I have to say. You know, every pundit, where they talk about business, politics, they all talk about the need for greater leadership. We've been talking about this for 2 decades, and we really have not made a lot of progress. I think to some extent because sometimes we're stuck with very broken stereotypes. You know, popular culture is kind of imagining that I'm going to go to Reagan Airport, and you know, while I'm waiting for the shuttle to New York, I'm going to pick up a little book about leadership, and then on the plane I'm going to flip through it and learn a few tips, and by the time the shuttle lands in LaGuardia Airport, I'm going to be a better leader. It's total nonsense, and we all know it is. I had the privilege of working with many good leaders. In your life and profession, you're exposed to wonderful leaders often. And without exception, the people who are leading well are not like people who know a few tricks and treat the rest of us like animals. The people who are leading well invariably have something rather deeper going on inside themselves. Remember, when I started, we just played this little game, right? And everybody thought of the names of a couple of leaders. So now I'm finished, but I remind us of that game, and I hope that everybody will please think of your own name first. When I say we need smart, virtuous, and dedicated people who are willing to suck it up and role model some very different ideas of leadership for a culture that in some ways is pretty hurting and that needs people who can bring different kinds of values and role models to the table. So thank you very much for listening. Okay, do we have time for a couple we have time for a couple of questions or comments, and I know, you know, a tradition is to be hospitable to people who come as a guest, and that's good for dinner, but not always the best for conversation. So all comments and questions are most welcome, including if you really disagreed with an idea, that's great too. You know, let's hear what you think. Please.
Sir Major Herman, courageous leap to leave seminary after 7 years of it, to do something strikingly different, like going to J.P. Morgan. I'm kind of curious as to why, and what were some of those decision-making processes?
Yeah. Okay. So let me make a couple of comments about that. So I started in seminary when I was 18 years old. You know, right after high school, and you know, in some ways I was an adult, and in some ways I wasn't. You know, as we age, we sort of we understand more about ourselves and we learn more. And so I was quite happy in the beginning, and then I started to get kind of unhappy, and you know, in the end I sort of appreciated, look, this is not maybe I could do this, but I'm not going to be a happy person, and we don't need unhappy priests, and we don't need unhappy naval officers, and we don't need unhappy politicians, you know? And so I sort of realized, all right, my path is going to be different in life. And let me digress to say this, you know, that one of the among the Jesuits, you know, the founder of the Jesuits had this idea that when we make choices, we have to use our heads, but our guts or spirits or hearts, however you want to use it, also have something to bring to the table, you know? And I always thought that was a very interesting observation. You know, in business, I'm sure in the military as well, we talk about people as having good gut feel. And just to understand, we always have to use our heads. But people who somehow have the ability to use head and heart together somehow often end up making the best choices. So I first, through my gut, through my heart, said, okay, look, I have to think about something here. And then I went to J.P. Morgan, frankly, because I didn't have a plan. You know, I was in New York. Last thing I was doing was teaching economics at a high school, a Jesuit high school. And my idea was, all right, I'll kind of get a job here, I'll get my feet, and then my life will be a do-over kind of, and in a couple of years I'll figure out what I want to do. And then, as it turned out, I was very happy, and I ended up staying for about 17 years. Please.
I can
John.
see a lot of connections between what you say and the what we read now in the newspapers about camping out on Wall Street and the social ferment that's involved with that. I wonder if you could just comment on that, how, because it grieves me as an individual to see society so experiencing such diverse and separating, centripetal sort of forces. Yeah. I'm sure that if a person who loved other society from Wall Street would do better than Wall Street has done. Huh. And that's what, so I resonate with what you said. But I wonder if you could just expand on what you think the causes of that are and what could be done to do something about it.
All right. Okay, people could hear the question, okay? All right, that's a question that's well beyond my rank or my expertise. and certainly I don't want to be the one to ignite a political debate, you know? But look, I'll answer the question. I'll tell you, this is a personal thing. I don't feel like I have any expertise. I'll tell you how I process the whole. I was actually down there 2 or 3 weeks ago. I have a friend visiting New York, and so we walked through there, and you know, so my parents were immigrants to the United States. They were not well educated. They didn't graduate. They probably didn't graduate from grammar school. And you know, I mean, this is a beautiful country, and that was the American dream. You know, that you could get. You can work hard, and we probably had like a lower middle class existence, and you could have a good existence, and you could help catapult your children into another level. And you know, there aren't that many countries in the world where that works, and it's a wonderful thing to see. And I don't think the people who are sitting in that square would in any way articulate what they're thinking in terms of what I just said, but part of my personal reflection is that, you know, the system is not enabling that story to happen quite enough, you know, and so people are kind of latching on to that, I guess, for all different reasons. But I, who lived on Wall Street and should be the first one to say, you know, who are these characters? I mean, I feel like that's how that speaks to me, you know, that we want to have to me, a system where the American dream works for a lot of people. It doesn't bother me at all that somebody makes boatloads of money. That's wonderful. But as long as we also have a place where somebody can have next to nothing and work hard and have a great life, then that's what we need. So,
thank you. That's great. Great answer. You're right, I think.
I tell you an anecdote. You know, in J.P. Morgan, we used to, at the time I started, used to hire a lot of people from, you know, upper middle class socioeconomic backgrounds, and that's wonderful. Nothing good or bad about that. But I had this buddy who he used to say, who came from the streets also, and his comment was, he goes, you know what the problem with this place is? He goes, we got too many people who were born on third base but who think they hit a triple. you know. And there's something about that too, you know. I mean,
I think also the military was started in this country as a product of the aristocracy. People bought their commissions into the British Army, for example, and that was carried over to the American Army to a certain extent. Because that was true for George Washington. He couldn't buy a commission into the British Army. That was the story I heard. And I think now it's very much an avenue for social mobility. You see where some of the breakthroughs in social acceptance and diversity have happened. It's been in the military context. I would opine, having looking back on a lifetime.
Please, Rabbi.
Seth Phillips, Battalion Chaplain. Sir, thanks for expanding the realm of leadership beyond the technical into the emotional and the person-centered. And for your next book, I'll share something that you might find helpful. Our football team on Friday, so before game day, they wear T-shirts that say love, honor, and toughness.
Wow.
And they incorporate that.
Wow. That's a great comment. I didn't know that, you know. And also, let me take the occasion also to thank you for that, Grace. I mean, you did a little bit of homework, and it was nice to hear. It was nice to hear that. I mentioned to Colonel Athens, actually, it was nice to. Of course, I know that prayer well, you know, because it's a Jesuit prayer. But it's the first time I'd heard it in this kind of a context, you know, in people who were in the services, and it was very touching to hear it in that context. And of course, as you would know, as some of the people may know, Ignatius of Loyola was a soldier. You know, the very short version of his life story was he was a kind of a playboy and a soldier, and he had this big battle injury, and then he had a conversion experience, and he ended up just becoming a priest and founder of a religious order. And let me say this, that so I talk about love, and you know, when my presumption had always been that that was a big value for him, for gospel, the Judeo-Christian tradition, and religious reasons. You know, that's why he talks about that. And of course, that is why he talks about that. But then I often have had the experience, at least 4 or 5 times, of giving a talk to a general group and having somebody come up to me afterward, often ex-Marines or Marines who just happen to be in the audience, and making a comment about how, no, we know all about that. You know, they might not use the word love, or they might use the word love, but they understand this concept and how vital and important it is. And it made me reflect a little bit on where did he get that idea. You know, I assumed it was just a gospel thing, but maybe that also came from his human experience of being with a group of people and having to depend on them vitally and understanding loyalty and love in that respect.
One more question.
Please.
One of the first things we tell the plebes when they get here is at the tables we will not be discussing religion or politics. And we try to stick to that. And obviously for reasons we don't want the conversation to go polarizing left, right, up, down, sideways. A lot of times with leadership, you know, you start to get into, you know, am I talking about leadership or am I talking about my faith?
Yeah.
Am I talking about all the things I've read or done through my life that are somehow tied into my faith? This is something that you can get people to jump on board with, but it's also something that can turn people off, depending on which side, left, right, up, down, whatever you want to call it. And when your experiences as a guy who was, you know, coming from the seminary, did you have something that helped you draw the line in the sand to where you made sure that you were not, you know, recruiting or just trying to get everybody on the same page?
Yeah. Okay. This is a very nice comment, and I'll answer it, but maybe with a little bit of a turn. I mean, I think what you say is exactly right. You know, and when I was thinking about writing the book, I thought about people who work with me at J.P. Morgan. You know, and okay, some Christians, some Catholics, Muslims, Jews, atheists. I mean, we had it all, you know. And to me, one of the things that's underrated about corporations and maybe about the military as well, you guys could say, is that, you know, these are environments where people from many different backgrounds manage to work together in a very close, dedicated way, and it's a miracle to see. You know, I think corporate America and probably the services as well have something really to teach us about how human beings can find common ground. But anyway, so I was thinking about that that kind of an audience. And so what was in my mind was, okay, look, could I find a way of taking ideas that for these Jesuits often would have religious roots and expressing those ideas in very human ways that, you know, I mean, a Christian might read it one way, but an atheist or a Muslim or a Jew could read it and either connect it to his or her own tradition or just to a human tradition if they don't have a faith tradition at all, you know. So that was what was on my mind. And I guess I feel, and probably it comes across in the way I'm talking, that, you know, great leadership has something very spiritual about it. And that doesn't mean Christian or Jewish or even necessarily of any religious tradition. You know, there are people who don't have confessional beliefs. You know, they're not part of a church, but have a kind of a spirituality. You know, in other words, they understand that there's more to life than just what I can count or add up or something like that, you know. And I think that there's something, you know, when exactly what you said, you know, that we have this instinct, and when we're talking about how to lead well, where we understand that there are things in it that go beyond what I can touch or write or add up or so on. And to me, you know, a key is how can I articulate the ideas in a way that will make somebody feel, oh yes, I can relate to that, and I don't feel excluded from that.
Let's give another hand to Thank you very much for an insightful and thought-provoking talk. We're going to give Mr. Lowney a nautical compass with the Stockdale Center inscription on it, which you can see as your moral compass as you continue your journey through life, and we appreciate your time with us. So thank you again for coming. For everyone who's a participant here, one of Mr. Lowney's books, Heroic Leadership, is available to you as you go out. Ms. Bem will can you a copy. Mr. Lowney has agreed to remain behind if you want him to put a note in your book to personalize it. I want to say thank you to Lieutenant Commander Mike Rack, the Deputy Director at the Stockdale Center. I'm not sure where Mike is. Where is Mike? Oh, there you are, Mike. So thank you to him, and to Marge Bem, our Senior Staff Associate, and to Jacqueline Dana, who's our Educational Specialist, for both planning and executing today's luncheon. But I also want to say thank you to all of you who are midshipmen for your service and for what you're going to do in leading sailors and Marines. I want to thank all of you who are in uniform, who are currently serving, those who have served in the past. And I also want to thank all those who are not in uniform, who have a special place here at the Naval Academy and provide that aspect of inspiration and example to the rest of the folks here at the Academy. So thank you for what you do. As you go out, I'd like you to think about those three words that this seminar is named for: honor, courage, and commitment. A daily commitment, and I think the things that Mr. Lowney shared with us are a great reminder of how we need to live our lives. So God bless you. Have a great rest of the day. And again, the books are on your way out, and we'll send Mr. Lowney out ahead so that he can be there ready to do those signatures. If you have another commitment, we understand you just need to pick up your book and run. But if you got a second and you want it signed, he's there. Thank you again for being with us.